Okay, welcome back to GA Fan TV. My name is Aaron. I'm delighted to be joined here today by a four-time All-Ireland winner and 11-time All-Star winner, Cora Staunton with Mayo. I suppose, first of all, Cora, how's things with yourself and how's Australia gone?
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Aaron. Yeah, all good. Yeah, currently in Australia, so in hotel quarantine at the moment because we flew out last week to Australia, so you have to do your 14 days in hotel quarantine. So doing that in Perth at the moment. So nearly halfway there, nearly halfway through. So we get out on Christmas Day. So yeah, won't be sorry to see the end of the hotel room, that's for sure.
Yeah, I can imagine so. Like, especially with most people having to quarantine, like going back and forth. Like obviously for yourself, like since you moved over there, like in 2017, like obviously you played football for a number of years, like with Mayo, and then obviously you played rugby and soccer at different points as well. Like, how does AFL compare to those sports? Like how would you compare your experience to when you played, obviously here in Ireland?
Yeah, obviously, the sports are, similar in some terms and obviously different in a lot of terms. I suppose with AFL comparing to any of the sports I've played in Ireland, obviously if you're in a professional environment, it's your job. Obviously that's the biggest thing. You're getting paid to do something that you love. So obviously facilities and stuff are a good bit better than they are at home, and the way we're kind of looked after. So from that point of view, yeah, it is different from the point of view of fitness and stuff like that. GAA isn't that far behind at all, fitness wise. It'd be much the same levels of fitness. I think probably the biggest difference when I originally came over was obviously the strength conditioning element. While it was getting going in ladies football, or for we'd say the previous few years that I had been with Mayo, but over here it's quite a big thing. We do a lot of strength conditioning work. We do at least 4 gym sessions, if not 5 gym sessions a week. So that was probably the biggest difference from me, outside of the skills of the game and obviously the structure of the game. But yeah, it's my time over here since I've come over in 2017. I've loved every minute of it.
Hmm. And obviously, like we're here today, obviously to preview the Dublin and Cork final, the ladies football final on Sunday. I suppose, like, what have you made of the championship since it got back up and running? Because obviously it didn't look like we were going to have a championship at one point anyway. So, like, what have you made of the ladies championship in 2020?
Yeah, I've watched most of the games, so yeah, obviously it's great first of all to see it back and have football, on the TV over the winter is brilliant to watch. And yeah, it's been quite open. I suppose the knockout format of it probably makes it a little bit more interesting. It's probably difficult on some teams rather than others. It all depended on what way you were drawn in your group. Obviously the teams that made the semi-final in 2019 were seeded, which made it harder for obviously the likes of the Donegals and that weren't seeded. So yeah, I think if you were one of them 4 teams, the draw, even though it didn't pan out that way for Mayo and particularly, the draw was probably more favourable. I think if the likes of Donegal, who met Dublin in the first round, were probably in any other group, I could say that they'd have made a semi-final, and who knows after that, because yeah, they gave Dublin a really good run for it on that night, and a free goal from Sinead Ahern, probably turned the tide, and that game could have really gone anywhere. I thought Donegal were a team to watch, but we're just unfortunate maybe in the group that they got in with Dublin.
Yeah, I definitely think that was the group of death, all right. Because even when Dublin played Waterford as well, like there wasn't really too much between them. I suppose, like, discussing your own county, Mayo, obviously just for a brief moment, like obviously they got a great win against Tyrone, but I suppose was the big disappointment maybe in that game versus Armagh. Like obviously Armagh have a lot of young players coming through at the moment, but like what have you made of Mayo anyway, like in the ladies football championship?
Yeah, I suppose obviously the Tyrone game was a massive win for them. Most teams were going in probably not fully prepared, as in they didn't have the access to the challenge matches and the league and stuff. So that was Mayo's first game was against Tyrone, and obviously they had a massive performance that day. So yeah, I suppose we went into Armagh, and Armagh, while they bet Tyrone, they wouldn't have been as convincing as Mayo bet Tyrone. So maybe Mayo went in, they did win as favourites, but maybe, I don't know if they went in underestimating Armagh, but anytime, we've played Armagh in the past, they're a very solid team, with some exceptional footballers. And yeah, on the day, it was a very tight and tense match. But yeah, I think Armagh had just that little bit of quality when it needed. Our defence just couldn't quite name Mac, and they just couldn't get on top of her at all. And she had a stormer that day, and obviously it was the difference. And Armagh have unearthed a lot of talent maybe that people didn't know about. We all knew about Amy Mackin and Caroline O'Hanlon, but the likes of Aoife McCoy and them had a very solid game, and their defence have come on a lot. Their fullback was excellent as well. So I think overall they were probably a better team on balance, and they're a physically strong team, and we've seen that when they play in the Dubs.
And I suppose looking at the final, like this Sunday, obviously between Dublin and Cork, like who do you reckon is coming in as favourites? Like obviously Dublin have won the last three, but Cork are obviously fairly dominant before then. So who do you reckon is coming in as favourites to win it?
Yeah, well, you'd obviously have to say the Dubs will be strong favourites. I know they're going for 4 in a row, and I think this is their 7th final that they've been in. And I think over the past number of years, since probably 2017 when they got their first All-Ireland win, I think they've come on leaps and bounds and have progressed and even got better every year since, and keep bringing in the odd player or two that maybe wasn't in the previous year. So they've a huge strong panel. Obviously Cork under Aoife won it in 2016, and that was kind of the end of that Eamon Ryan team that was around. I think their team has changed a lot. While there is girls there from 2016, they have won All-Ireland medals. They have a lot of new players in. They're still relying on the likes of the older girls like the O'Sullivans, Kieran, Darren, and the likes of the Orla Finns and Roisin Phelans. But they have a lot of girls there that haven't won an All-Ireland medal. They haven't had the Croke Park experience, even though they had it the last year, but they haven't had the All-Ireland final Croke Park experience. So yeah, you obviously you'd have to back the Dubs because of their form over the last few years, even though I would say in their 2 group games against Donegal and Waterford, they have been patchy, and at stages in the semi-final they have been patchy. So I'm sure Cork have looked at that and I've seen that they're probably not at the full peak of their powers like they have maybe in other years, but maybe they're like the Limerick hurlers, they're saving their best performance for the final.
Yeah, like I suppose it was pretty close in those games. Like they beat Donegal by 3 and then Waterford by 4, Armagh by 5. So they were certainly close enough margins in those games compared to some of Cork's games. Like who stood out, do you think, for this Dublin team this year in particular? And who do you think could cause the most problems, I suppose, to this Cork team in the final?
Yeah, it's actually very interesting with Dublin this year. Collectively they normally play very well and are very structured in their forward line. I think where this year in different matches and in different stages, it's been a different player every time. We take the likes of the Armagh game, it was Carla Rowe that stood up, and maybe when Sinead Ahern went off injured, and the rest of her, Niamh McAvoy didn't start, and the rest of the girls maybe having a little bit of a quieter game. Noelle Healy still had a good enough game, but wouldn't have been to the peak of her powers as in other games. So I think in every game has been someone different. I think their most consistent performer throughout the 3 games has certainly been Lindsay Davey. I think she's had a very, very good campaign, and in my eyes, if Dublin win, is probably the lead player for Footballer of the Year. I just think she's very, very consistent in that forward line. She works extremely hard. You can see her in any part of the pitch, and she's a real leader for the team. Probably sometimes doesn't get as much recognition. I'm sure she does within her own squad because of the talent they have in that forward line. Whether it's Sinead Ahern, as I said, Carla Rowe, Noelle Healy. Obviously Nicole Owens is new back, so that game will do her good. But I think Lindsay has been probably their standout forward, and I think their backline has at times been solid. They've had good performances from different players. Goldie obviously has been consistent throughout, and Niamh Collins and players like that. So, but yeah, I really think that Lindsay Davey is key to this team on Sunday, and Cork, it'll be a player that Cork will certainly be trying to man-mark.
And I suppose, obviously, like you were kind of touching on Dublin, like kind of getting through the line, obviously in 2017. Obviously, like you came up against them in 2017, and you played them numerous times, like down the years. Like for you, like what do you think what was the difference for Dublin in getting over the line in 2017, maybe compared to previous years?
Yeah, well, yeah, obviously, I think the opponents in ourselves were, was probably a big thing for them. We had beaten Cork in the semi-final. I think there was probably Cork had a bit of a thing over them because they had, obviously lost the 3 finals previous to that. So yeah, I think with the new opposition obviously helped, and yeah, I think the disappointment of losing, I think, was 3 in a row. Obviously, it helps them. Sometimes you have to lose to know exactly what it's like to win. So I do think that helped. Obviously, Mick Bohan came in, has made a huge change to the team. He's a very good manager, and he has set this Dublin up with a game plan that they all follow, and they all know their role, and they just follow the process and the system that they're playing to. And I really think the biggest thing that he's probably brought to Dublin over his period there is there's a very steeliness, a high level, high intensity game plan that he plays. But they're very physically strong, and in the best sense of the word, without being in any way disrespectful for them. They play a very aggressive style of football, and they're very aggressive tacklers, and they play very well. They play quite in your face and get on top of you, which is a brilliant way of playing it. So I think he's brought that steely edge to them, and they're quite physical and strong, and when you have that along with a lot of skill within the team, they're going to be very hard to stop.
I suppose looking at this Cork team and their kind of route to the final, they obviously beat Kerry by 3, and then had a good win over Cavan by 18 points to top the group, and then obviously beat Galway by 10 points in the semis as well. Like I suppose like kind of a bigger margin of victory for Cork and some of them games. Like what have you made of Cork yourself?
Yeah, I seen their first game against Kerry. To be honest, that night I wasn't that impressed with them. I thought if Kerry had any bit of resolve in them, and just I think maybe lack of experience within Kerry, or maybe it was because they were coming up against Cork. I think Kerry could have got over the line very easily in that match. Cork just about dug it out. Obviously against Cavan, that was a big victory for them. While I'd say the first 20 minutes of that match was quite close, and they conceded a couple of goals to Cavan, which, I'm sure they weren't happy. In the second half, they pulled away and obviously won well. So they'd have learned a bit from that. And yeah, I suppose the biggest surprise for me was the game against Galway. We all expected it to be, tight, intense, fair. And that game really, when you were calling it, it could have gone anywhere. Obviously, we know the circumstances that, transpired from that game with the whole Galway situation and the warm up and the change of pitches. But I was in Croke Park that day working for RT, so I was lucky enough I got to watch the match, and I was very impressed with Cork on that day. Their hunger, again, their intensity, and their intensity in the tackle, to get around the player that was on, to get around the Galway player that was on the ball. They were constantly hunting in packs 2 or 3, and Galway struggled to get the ball out of their defence a lot of the time, and that was because of the pressure that the Cork forward line and the Cork midfield put on Galway. So yeah, I was hugely impressed with them. It could have been an even bigger victory than it was for Cork, and on that day it was led by their experienced players, especially Ciara O'Sullivan, Darren O'Sullivan at times, who played quite a different role than she normally would, and then they have a lot of pace in that half back line, and Aoife seems to give them the freedom to attack and get forward, and it was to huge benefit the last day against Galway. So yeah, they're probably their strong points, and they're very well organised. I do think that it'll be a very, very good game. They just have to be very careful not to get swallowed up by that intense Dublin tackling and running into tackles, because I do think Dublin are physically stronger in the majority of areas.
Mm. And obviously, like you kind of touched on the Cork Galway game there. Like obviously, it was a great game as soon as it got played. But obviously, it was originally fixed for the Gaelic grounds in Limerick, and then it was moved to Parnell Park, and then eventually Croke Park. Like, what did you make of that entire situation yourself? Like, obviously, you got to see the game in Croke Park. Like, what was it kind of like as the whole situation unfolded?
Yeah, well, obviously I was driving to Dublin that morning, and then it was only when I was actually, I think I'd parked in Crow Park, and I got a message actually from one of my friends to say, oh, that the ladies' match had been changed to Cork and you're going to get to see it. And she explained to me that it wasn't going to be on television. Obviously, I was driving at the time, so I didn't see anything on social media. So yeah, when I came to the ground, obviously I was talking to a few of the people from RT, and they had just said that it wasn't going to be televised, which to me was hugely disappointing for an All-Ireland semi-final, and especially in the current climate with COVID and people not being able to travel to matches. That I think that was hugely disappointing and a huge setback for ladies football, because I thought obviously before the game was going to start that this is probably going to be one of the best games of the year, because I thought of the closeness of the two teams. So from that point of view, as it unfolded, yeah, it was hugely disappointing. And I suppose what transpired in probably the next 24 hours, and what went on in the media, and finding out that the whole thing about their 7-minute warm-up, and the way the Galway management and team were spoken to, and just the lack of respect towards the players, it's hugely disappointing. And I suppose for the president of the association to come out and say, oh, if they weren't so long in the dressing room, they would have more of a warm-up. And yeah, I just think it just gave off the wrong look for ladies sport, not just even ladies football, within the country. And yeah, I'm sure from a Galway point of view, they're not using it as an excuse for their defeat, but I suppose if you're training for probably your biggest game of the year, and that happens, it's hugely disappointing. So all you can hope for is that the ladies football will learn from it, and these things has to stop happening. Whether it's dual players and having kind of playing both matches, and associations not changing matches, or venue changes, or whatever it needs to be, that needs to all change. We're in 2020. I played obviously intercounty football for a long time, and these things were happening 15 years ago, and nothing has really changed. So I just hope, because there was obviously a lot of media attention from it, that I hope that we don't see these type of things happening. And I suppose over the last few days we've seen with the WGPA and the GPA merging, maybe that's a stepping stone to more equality within Gaelic games.
Yeah, and like obviously, yeah, it was disappointing, because obviously, it was a great game from what I heard, and I feel like that kind of really should have been the main talking point. But like obviously, there's a lot of people kind of talking at the moment about maybe like the LGFA and the Camogie Association and the GEA kind of going under the one umbrella. Like, what do you think yourself? Do you think maybe it would be better if the LGFA and the Camogie Association did go under the GEA and they all kind of came together?
Yeah, I think it's the only way forward, to be honest. And I think it's been the only way forward for the last number of years. The reason being, I say that because of ladies football and camogie don't own any of their own grounds. Very few do, if any. I think Armagh ladies are the only ones that are in the process of owning their own training grounds, because we'd say 99% of counties don't have any grounds to train in. It's all from the goodwill of the GEA that they're getting these grounds for matches or training, whatever it may be. And that's not going to change unless we come in under the one umbrella. We're going to have the same issues that we had 10, 15 years ago in another 10, 15 years time. And I just don't think for ladies sport, that's a good look. We need more equality in sport, and we need ladies footballers or camogie players to be treated the same as their male counterparts. And yeah, I honestly do think it's the only way forward, that we come all under one association. If you sit and look at it, you wonder why it was never always under the one association. You look at the FAI or the IRFU, or you look at any of the individual sports, Swim Ireland or Athletics Ireland, whatever it might be. There's not separate organisations, and this is the biggest sporting organisation in Ireland. And yeah, we certainly. I listened to an interview from Nicky Brennan that he done last week, and he tried to do this back in 2014, and I said maybe they weren't ready, but 6 years has moved on, and I think it's certainly that's something that needs to be done in the near future.
Absolutely, yeah, and I 100% agree with you as well. Like, I think if they did all come together, I think it would definitely smooth things out anyway. Like, especially kind of moving into the long term. I suppose looking at you're kind of going back to the game, obviously, like what do you kind of see as the main sort of, is there any kind of weaknesses in this Cork team do you think that Dublin can exploit, and I suppose vice versa when it comes to Dublin and Cork?
Yeah, I suppose obviously there's probably weaknesses in the Cork team. It probably, when I say weaknesses, is probably their lack of experience. Yeah, as I said, they do have a couple of players that are experienced, the likes of Kieran, Darren O'Sullivan, Orla Finn, Martina O'Brien, but they've a lot of youth there that's, whether they're only in this year or in last year. So that experience of the big day and playing against this Dublin team is certainly one of them. I do think their physicality, when I'm saying physicality, just I think Dublin are more physically strong. They're at a different level of physicality in terms of strength conditioning. While Cork have a few players that are, well able to match it in the physical stakes, they don't have as many as Dublin. I think Dublin are playing a system under Mick for the last 4 years or more, and they know exactly what they're about, and that system nearly off to a T. So, yeah, I think from that point of view, Cork will struggle. And on the other side of it, if they're going to try and get over Dublin, how can they look at Dublin's weaknesses and see how they can get over it? The biggest thing I've seen from Dublin this year, and as I said, maybe I could be wrong, it could be all hell for the final, is that they just haven't played that. They've been very patchy in games. They've had maybe a good 10 minutes here and there. They haven't put in, full 60 minutes, and at times haven't probably even put in a full half. Against teams the likes of Waterford, that they should be, beaten well. They were just Donegal. They were just about getting over the line, and I think they're going to need to put in a higher performance than that if they are to get over Cork. I just think their forward line hasn't been very connected so far this year. Now that again could change. I just think they've had good individual performances from certain people, but as a collective they haven't clicked. So if that doesn't happen the next day, that could be an issue for them. So I do think there's pace in that Cork half back line, and if they use the pace, use the ball a bit like Armagh did. Armagh gave in a lot of first time ball into Mackin and didn't carry the ball into the tackle. Dublin struggled at times against Armagh, conceded 3 goals, which is very un-Dublin like. So there probably is a weakness if Cork can exploit it and play that sort of game plan. If they need big performances from the likes of Kira and Darren. Kira was exceptional the last day. If they play Darren inside and get enough ball into her quickly, and that halfback line is going at pace, they can threaten Dublin. But that's a lot of ifs. If you're asking me to call the game, it'd be certainly, you'd have to give it to Dublin. But I do think it'll be a lot closer than people think.
Mm. And I suppose then, just before we finish up, obviously Mayo are playing Dublin in the men's final this weekend, and obviously you're a Mayo woman yourself. Do you think that 2020 is finally the year that Mayo are going to end the way for Sam?
You can only dream, can't you? And you can hope. It's been the year of the unknown, and it's been a crazy year. So what's not to say it finishes off with a I wouldn't say a crazier result, but a result that a lot of people probably won't be expecting. Yeah, I do give Mayo a huge chance. I think they're going to have to be absolutely at their top of their game, and they're going to have to try and hopefully get Dublin maybe on a little bit of a down day. But I do think, there's a good mixture of, I've watched them a lot this year. There's a good mixture of experience there, and the youth I think has really brought this team on, and there's a lot of pace and power and speed in the youth that's there, especially particularly the 5 lads that are starting. And I think they hold no fear. I think when you're young and you're going into maybe your first All-Ireland, and I think the whole crowd situation and having no crowds of games will help Mayo in particular, because I think sometimes when things go wrong in the Cauldron or Crow Park and there's 83,000, even though a lot of them are Mayo supporters, there's more pressure, and I think Mayo will be able to express themselves more with no crowds there, and I think that will help them. So yeah, I do think it's going to be tough, and they're going to have the performances of their life, but I just do think that there's something about this Mayo team that they can get over the line, but as I said, it's going to have to be one hell of a performance for them.
Perfect. Well, look, listen, cheers for coming on, Cora. Anyway, and yeah, best of luck with the quarantine and all that. Hopefully, hopefully time goes by quickly enough for you.
Thanks a million. Yeah, pleasure to be on. Thank you.